All right, question number 41. Who are the Nephilim in Genesis chapter 6 and verse number 4? Before we get into this, have you even heard of Nephilim in Genesis chapter 6 and verse number 4?
Yes.
No, it is not like a humphalumph. Let's take a look at whatever it is. Okay. Genesis chapter 6 and verse number 4. It says this: the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. And yes, Nephilim is translated as giants.
Yeah, and good
Okay. Well, giants can be more than just simply giant in stature. Giants can be something that is renowned, so to speak. And I think that that's why it says there at the last part of that verse, it says they were heroes of old, men of renown. Okay, and so that's giants. Now, whether they were bigger physically or not, I think that what this verse is talking about here is that these people were heroes of old. They were men of renown, and that's what the idea about giants are. I mean, even in our language, we have that use of the word giants. I mean, have you heard the phrase giants of industry or giants of business? It's people who are well known in business, well known in industry. It's people who are influential and powerful in those areas. They were the bigwigs, so to speak. Okay, so who exactly are these? By the way, some translations will translate Nephilim as far as giants, and so when you read Genesis chapter 6 and verse 4, you might come across translation where it says giants. And, that's fine. That's an okay translation. It's just that sometimes people will get the idea of, it's a giant, like, Jack and the Beanstalk giant, and get the wrong idea. Because even if it is somebody who's got a increased stature, Goliath and his brothers were considered giants. When the Israelites were coming into the Promised Land and they looked at the Canaanites, they called them giants. And so, we're not talking about 50-foot tall Jack and the Beanstalk giants. We're talking about, somebody that's just going to be bigger than that. But I think that, based on what the last part of that verse is, heroes of old, men of renown, that it's really talking about more of the influential powerfulness side of these people than it is the actual stature. Now, that's why some translations just want to transliterate the Hebrew and just simply anglicize it and just leave it a Nephilim. Okay? So who are these? Now, if you find some commentaries and stuff, what you're going to find is that some people will say these are fallen angels that decided to go and marry human women and have babies. And that's kind of far-fetched, isn't it? Okay? But there's two reasons why people will say that. One is they will say that in the book of Job, where it says that the sons of God came and presented themselves before the Lord's throne, that those are angels. And so, yes, that phrase, sons of God, can mean angels. But at the same time, we've got to remember that sons of God does not, when you find definition in one part of the Bible, it doesn't mean that it's that way all the way around. It means that you have to look at it per context, right? Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, even though it does mean that there. But there is a Jewish belief, and when I say Jewish belief, this dates back to the days of Jesus, before the days of Jesus, where this is what their viewpoint of it was, that fallen angels married with women and then produced a quasi-human race, and that was something that brought on the flood. But when you look at it, according to what Jesus said, that can't be true, okay? And let's take a look at Matthew chapter 22. All right, so Matthew chapter 22, Jesus is, excuse me, Jesus is being questioned by a lot of different people, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And the Sadducees were people who did not believe in the resurrection, and so they had this little trick that they liked to play against the Pharisees who believed in the resurrection, and that is they'd say, hey, here's a hypothetical situation. The hypothetical situation is that this woman goes and marries this guy, and before they have children, he dies. And then she marries the brother, and then before they have children, he dies. And then he marries the brother, and he dies. And then he marries the brother, and he dies. And so you got 7 brothers married to the same woman, and so then after they all die, in the resurrection, whose wife is she going to be? Okay, so that was a little bit of a little brain puzzle that they used to love to trick the Pharisees with, and made the Pharisees really upset. And so they kind of felt like, hey, let's do this to Jesus. You know, if we're really going to trap Jesus, let's pull out the old 7 brothers, 1 wife trick, and we're going to really foul him up. And notice what Jesus replies. He says, you are in error because you do not know the Scriptures or the power of God. And so right off the bat, he's saying, look, you're just flat out wrong. No doubt about it. And he explains it. He says, at the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage, but they will be like the angels in heaven. Okay? Now, let's stop and think about this for a second. Jesus is not saying that at the resurrection we're going to be angels. Jesus is saying at the resurrection we are going to be like angels. And there is a big difference between something that is something and something that is like something, right? Okay, so he's taking a situation about angels and he's comparing it to people at the resurrection. And what he's doing is saying that angels aren't married and given in marriage. Why does that matter? What he's saying is that angels aren't going to have baby angels. All right? And he's saying that at the resurrection, people aren't going to have babies either. And that nullifies the Pharisees or the Sadducees' argument about the woman and the 7 brothers and everything, right? Okay? But angels don't have baby angels. I know that we've got, the little cherubim floating around Valentine's Day, but that's just all fiction anyway. There's no such thing as a baby angel. An angel is a spiritual being that God created, and God created a fixed number of these spiritual beings, and that's it, period. We're not going to become angels, and angels aren't going to become us. And so for people to say, oh, well, angels came down and became people in order to intermarry with people, wait a minute, how? How can a dog decide that it's going to be a fish? It's not going to be. How can we say, hey, I want to be a leopard? It ain't going to happen, right? You can't just simply say, I'm going to switch species. It doesn't work that way. And for the Lord to say, okay, we've got a fixed number of angels, no more angels, you guys are not going to have babies, you're not going to be married, you're not going to do anything like that. People, on the other hand, there's just 2 people created, Adam and Eve, and he told them to go and fill the earth, multiply, So you see, you've got 2 different things going on. So the idea that you could go and have angels come over and intermarry people, that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So let's go back to Genesis chapter 6, and let's kind of see what this is all about, all right? So we've got these sons of God who look at the daughters of men. They are beautiful, and so they go and they marry any one of them that they choose, and then from those marriage come these Nephilim, these men of renown, these heroes of old, right? That's exactly what it's saying. So to kind of understand where this is and what it's coming from, all we have to do is we just have to go back in the book of Genesis and just kind of put things into context, all right? And when we do that, it kind of makes it a little bit easier. So Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3 is where we've got Adam and Eve eating the fruit and then falling into sin. And then from that, they are cast out of the Garden of Eden, and we come to chapter 4. In chapter 4, what we've got is Adam, and Adam has two sons. He's got Cain and Abel, right? So Cain is a farmer, Abel is one that tends to the flocks. Both are offering up sacrifices to God, but Abel's sacrifice is being accepted and Cain's sacrifice is being rejected. Why? Well, according to the book of Hebrews, Abel's sacrifice was offered in faith and Cain's wasn't. And so Abel, he was taking the first fruits of his flock and he was offering it as a sacrifice in faith, meaning that he recognized that he was the sinner and that he recognized that God was going to send a substitute for his sin. That's the reason why God accepted it. Cain, on the other hand, took the first fruits of his crop because he was a farmer and he was offering that before the Lord. But the Lord was rejecting it because God didn't just simply want something that was the first fruit of your crop. He wanted something that was going to demonstrate faith in an upcoming sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And so the story is that Cain was angry about this. And because he was angry about this, he went and took his brother out in the field and attacked his brother and killed him. No more Abel. Okay? So what we see from this is the Lord comes and confronts Cain, and the Lord says, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground, and now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain, you ain't going to be a farmer anymore. You're going to be a hunter-gatherer, so to speak. And so we see that Cain says, "Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence, and I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." And so at this point, even though we've got Cain and Abel, these are not the only brothers and sisters that are there. As a matter of fact, there are other brothers and sisters, and one brother in particular, whose name is Seth, who is really going to be taking the place of Abel as far as place goes. Now notice what the Lord says. The Lord said to him, "Not so, if anyone kills Cain, he will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain that no one who found him would kill him. And so the Lord said, and this is kind of a graciousness of the Lord, "Cain, don't worry about it. Nobody's going to kill you. As a matter of fact, if anybody kills you, they are going to suffer my vengeance 7 times, 7 being the number of completion." And to make sure that Cain that he was going to be taken care of, God put this mark on him. Now I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent real quick, because there are some white supremacist groups who will say that black people have the mark of Cain, which is absolutely complete and utter nonsense. Number one, the color of skin does not, you read this about God marking Cain. How in the world do we even know it is a skin color? We don't. Number two, how do we even know that it went on and was passed on to his children? We don't. But the real kicker here is that all of Cain's descendants died in the flood. And so African Americans can't have the mark of Cain because it is impossible for anybody to have the mark of Cain. But, if you come across something like that, you know where they get it from and you know why it's so stupid. All right? Okay. Well, back to this. What we see is that Cain has kids. And if we look at these kids, what we see is that Cain gives birth to Enoch, which is a different Enoch than the Enoch that you know about. And then from Enoch, we've got Irad. Anybody looking for baby names? We got some good ones coming up. All right. From Erid, we have got Mahushael. Oops, it's an E, not a U. Mahushael. And then we have got, Methushal. Okay, good baby names going on here. Okay, so Methushal was the father of Lamech. Now, Lamech is a really interesting guy here because we just have, this person, this person, this person, this person until we get to Lamech. Lamech is the first recorded instance of polygamy. Verse number 19. Lamech married two women, one named Ada, the other Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who worked in tents and raised livestock. And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all who played the harp and flute. Zillah also had a son, Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. And so from this, we've got Jabal, Jubal, and then Tubal-Cain. Okay? All right. So you say, well, what is the big deal about this? Let's go and take a look at these other names in chapter 5. In chapter 5, now we've got a genealogy that is coming from Adam. And so from Adam, here we've got Seth. And then after Seth, what we have is we come on down to Enosh. After Enosh, what we have is Kenan. After Kenan, we have Mahalalel. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And then from Mahalalel, we have got Jared. Hey, that is a normal name, isn't it? All right, making sure I'm spelling that correctly. Okay, after Jared, then we've got this other Enoch. And this other Enoch is the Enoch that you are thinking of, okay? This is the Enoch that it says that he walked with God and God took him and he was no more, all right? Pretty interesting, isn't it? And then after Enoch, then we have got Methuselah. Oops. After Methuselah, we have Lamech, another Lamech, and then we have Noah. Okay? So you say, all right, this is really interesting and everything, but let's take a look at this. Let's examine it. Okay? First of all, let's look at some of these names. We've got Adam being the first generation, Cain, Enoch, Erid, Mahushael, Methushal, and then Lamech, okay? Lamech being that epitome of a bad guy. He was, and I didn't read this, but he was such the epitome of a bad guy, he went home to his wives and he bragged that he had killed a man for wounding me, okay? Somebody had done something wrong to him, and so he went out and he killed him. And what he said was this in verse 24, chapter 4, if Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. So I can do more for me than God can do for me. It's basically what Lamech's whole life was about, okay? And so if you think about, here is a bad lineage that is coming from Cain, that in the 7th spot where it is going to be the number of completion is going to be this bad guy, Lamech. Now, one thing that we need to understand about genealogies is that genealogies are not quite exactly what we think. Genealogies we think are going to be this exact record of everything, but in the Bible, what we really see is that genealogies are really just trying to bridge gaps and to try to point us from one direction to another. And so in chapter 5, when we talk about the son of Seth is Enosh, the son of Enosh is Kenan, and everything like that, this really could be the grandson, or this could be the great-grandson. The way that they looked at it is that a father was somebody who was formerly descended and, that they came from, and the son was the people thereafter. For example, when the Jews came up to Jesus, and Jesus talked about how they were enslaved to sin, they said, "We are sons of Abraham," right? Well, that was centuries between the two, but they viewed themselves as children of Abraham, sons of Abraham. And they said, after Jesus said, "The devil's your father," they said, "No, Abraham is our father." And so when you look at genealogies, it's not supposed to be that way. Instead, it's supposed to paint a picture here. And so the picture that we're supposed to paint here is we've got Cain, according, across is Seth. So bad person, Seth is taking Abel's spot. Then Enoch and Enosh, Irad, Kenan, Mehushael, and Mahalalel. And then Methushael and Jared. And then right across them, Lamech. We've got Enoch. And you remember what Enoch is. Enoch was the man who walked with God. And because he walked with God, God took him and translated him, and he was no more. Do you see the contrast between these two different men? And so these are the sons of God. These are the daughters of men. You say, okay, well, why do you say that this is the daughters of men? Just simply because of this. We've got Lamech's 3 sons, but in addition to Lamech's 3 sons, you notice that also we have got a daughter that is given as well. Okay? And so if you look at verse number 22, it says, Tubal Cain's sister was Naamah. Now that's a nice name, isn't it? Naamah.
Chloe and Quentin are looking for names.
Naamah. You know what Naamah means?
How about that one, Quentin?
What?
No, sounds like a sick goat.
Nama means name in German.
In Hebrew, Naamah means beautiful.
What does it mean in German?
Okay?
Name.
Now, look at what it says in chapter 6 and verse 4. That the Nephilim were produced when the sons of God looked at the daughters of men and saw they were what? Beautiful. Okay? Now, the word in chapter 6 and verse 4 is not the same word in Hebrew as what Naamah is. Instead, that word is good, whereas this is pleasant. But at the same time, you can kind of see the idea that the daughters of man at this point are pleasant, they are beautiful physically, but at the same time, they are not good spiritually. They are not good emotionally. They should not be married. And no, we're not talking about interracial marriages, because this is all one race. Instead, we're talking about people going over and marrying people that they shouldn't and don't have any business marrying. If you think about it, when people get married, they do need to take a look at what their beliefs are. They need to take a look at what the character of the person that they're marrying, because if they have to compromise their beliefs, if they have to compromise their character, then the only thing that can come from that is, well, I don't want to say the only thing, because there's sometimes that people turn around and change, but what comes from that is usually speaking bad. And that's kind of what we have here. And so here we've got sons of God, daughters of men in this next generation here, where Jabal, Jubal, and Tubal-Cain are the fathers of all of this industry, all of this advancement in technology. And that is, we go back to chapter 4 again and we look at it, and that is that Jubal is the father of all those who play the harp. Tubal-Cain is the one that forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Jubal is the father of all who live in tents and raise livestock. And so you can see that there is the beginnings of those giants of industry, right? And then we've got the next generation after that, which is the generation of Lamech. And then we've got the next generation after that, which is the next generation of Noah, where God looks at what is going on the earth and says, enough is enough. You know, these Nephilim, I think, were just people, but they were people who were ultra-humanistic. They were people who were very wicked. They were people who were very selfish and into themselves. And they were people who were very godless and could not care less about God. Because if we have this generation, first generation, second generation, third generation of people who are raising kids like this, you can see why God is now going to look at what is going on the earth and saying that he regrets making mankind. So what do you think about that? Got any questions on that?